Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm your host, Anna.gray. The best thing about being a nurse and entrepreneur over the last 25 years are the relationships I've developed and the people I've met. As a legal nurse consultant, I wanted you to hear from those amazing people in the legal and healthcare communities. I wanted you to hear who they are and to celebrate them with me. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. Let's dive into the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. So glad to have you this week. I am super excited to welcome my guest, Bridget, to the podcast. Thank you, Bridget, for joining me. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Anna. So excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, this should be fun. Okay, so since we've already discussed, we've listened to the podcast before, there's no mystery. That's the great thing about this podcast. Everybody knows what to expect. Where are you coming from? What part of the country are you coming from?
Yes, I am hailing from good old Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am a Philly girl through and through, born and raised. I went to nursing school here, and I did do a stint in, and we'll get there, travel nursing, lived in California, San Diego for a little bit. Loved it.
We're going to have to go down that road a little bit too, for sure.
But yeah,
so you're a Philly girl. I've been to Philly. Are you a sports fan in Philly?
I have.
They're pretty,
we bleed green.
They're pretty strong fans. Yeah.
Yes. We are. Yes, it is. I bleed green. We'll just put it that way.
You bleed green. Okay. All right.
Kind of Santa.
Got it. So you're a football fan. I got it. Are you a hockey fan? There's a reason I asked that too.
I dabble. Yes. Flyers. Okay. Since I was younger, we used to have the Phantoms and.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My kids, years ago, we flew to Philly and we flew kind of all over there. And took my kids to a Flyers game. That was brave. Wearing our LA Kings fan gear, knowing that we would be heckled. And there's a reputation, but guess what? They were so kind. They were really, really kind. So they were great hecklers. So I have a special place in my heart for the Flyers fans, which probably a lot of people can't say, but I can. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would say Flyers and Phillies are a little more receptive.
Okay. All right. But the football side, strong.
Yes. Strong greenness there. Yes.
Got it. Okay. So you were born and raised in Philly and went to nursing school there. Did you go to nursing school right out of high school or was there
Yes. So I guess I would say I accidentally got into nursing school. So my original path, I wanted to be a writer, which is going to be funny how I get there because I'm a writer now. But I wanted to originally go for writing, and my mom is a nurse, been a nurse for 35 years. And she was like, why don't you try nursing? And you can work and then you can do the writing, like try to weld that. And I was 17 when I graduated high school. So I was like, sure. So I transferred into a program, which knowing now, that's not norm. But I transferred. I went to Gwinnett Mercy College, which is now Gwinnett Mercy University. It's a rigorous nursing program. And at the time, it was an RN to BSN. So it was a 2 and 2. So the idea that I discussed with my mom was get my RN and then work to get my bachelor's in something else. Well, at the time, that's when everyone started, changing the tide, and you needed a BSN to get a job. So moved through with that, which was great. So I did, I received my RN in 2010. And then BSN, I secured it in 2011. So it was funny. I'm like, I can give drugs and push medications, but couldn't legally drink.
Right. No, that's amazing. I find a lot of nurses I've talked to now that have gone down that road, and I find it fascinating. I obviously ask for other reasons too, because I have a daughter. It's so funny that you said that about your mom being a nurse. and your mom's saying exactly what you just told me, why don't you just do this? And then I've told my daughter the exact same thing. And she was young when she graduated high school, but she also had 2 years of college done. So
Nice.
she got her bachelor's done and is going to go to nursing school now, but she's super young. So it's funny that it's like the mom thing. Just get it. It's perfect. It's a great foundation. I'm sure you heard that too. It's a great foundation. Then in the future, do whatever you want to do. You can travel. I find myself doing that. So I don't know if that's what she said to you, but
Yes. Yes. And honestly, like looking back, obviously, and we'll talk about like it all made sense. It was just a cobblestone journey. But at the time, like I said, like 17, I'm like, why not? And it's so interesting that I was on my senior week, like that summer of June. And then by fall, I was giving bed baths and then working as a student nurse's aide. Like
wow. Yeah.
kind of
Young.
terrifying thinking about that. I'm like, oh, but it's been a journey.
I was gonna say almost like you don't know what you don't know. You're so young, you don't know what you don't
Mhm.
know. You get older, you get jaded, and then you put yourself in that position and you start to overthink things. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise, right? You're being so young, you're like, I don't know, this is
Fine.
supposed to be. So that's awesome. Okay. So when you went through nursing school, did you have a specific specialty that you were like, I just would love to work in this specialty? What did that look like for
Yes.
you?
Let's talk about that young mindset of, I would say naive. I guess naivety was on my side. When I did it, and it's actually, so nursing school was interesting, and I want to put this in here because it's really fun to come to the full circle moment that I'll talk about. I actually failed med surge 2 my freshman year,
Okay. Okay.
and I say that excitedly because I didn't learn how to learn. Like learning and test taking things came easy to me. Nursing school, I thought it was no different. I was like, I'll just do this, which that was a lesson. It's a whole
Mhm.
different learning how to learn and how to tweak your mind. So it forced me, like, it was a big wake up call to be like, hey, get it together, take this seriously. And I did. And obviously, like, it happened within that 4 year, but the way the program worked, it was cyclical. So I had to wait a whole nother year to retake that course.
Mhm.
So that really shifted how, this is taking it more seriously and learning how to learn and respecting. I had a whole new respect for nursing and the whole
Right.
industry itself. So
Right.
it was fun. And then at the time I was like, doing all your clinicals, I'm like, I'm only working in pediatrics. That's it. I'm working, I initially was a NICU NP, which God bless the NICU NPs and NICU nurses, didn't wind up there, but pediatrics, always my jam. I was like, this is what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. And again, when you come out of school and you're like, you not get what you get, but you pursue what is available, right? But because I failed that course, it put me in a summer cohort for senior summer. And I had the opportunity for what was it, the leadership that I was able to go to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Like, so that's where like one-on-one and meeting with the leadership. I'd say audacity now in a good way. I brought my resume. I was like, I'm graduating. I'm ready to work. And I landed with my BSN, landed my first pediatric nursing role there. And I did work in long-term care with adults while I was getting my BSN, but I was like, end game, I want to do peds. So yes, it was devastating failing that course because there was a lot of reproof, especially from different individuals that were like, you should just give up. Give up. This is obviously not for you. You don't know, you don't care enough, da, da, da. And it's like, you don't know people's story, right? You don't know,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
know. And it was
No,
all,
I'm glad you shared that because you honestly you don't ever hear those that have, especially in nursing, you don't hear those that have failed a course, failed the NCLEX, have to take it 3 times. We don't, we're so prideful that we don't want to talk about that. So you talking about it probably gives so many other people a relief because they may have the same story as you, even though it's in the past. And but I don't know, there's some comfort in knowing that, there's always a reason. I think I need to share this podcast episode with my daughter for the
Yes.
future.
And it kicked
For that
my
reason.
butt. No, it kicked my butt into gear. Seriously, because it was like, and people just telling me like you're not smart enough. And it's like, you don't know me. Like it got like a Philly girl like all up in arms, like you don't know me. And I got serious. I passed the NCLEX in 75. Like I learned that I had, I test anxiety, all the things, especially, nursing school, I think gives that to a lot of people. But just overcoming that and learning how to address it and pass in 75, no questions asked. Like it was a lot of discipline. And I'm jumping around, but I love the full circle that now I'm a co-author of a med-surg textbook, writing the chapter
Wow.
that I did
It's
not do well in.
amazing.
And I was a professor, adjunct professor in fall 22 for freshmen. It was an accelerated course. And I don't know, it was, again, a full circle moment and imparting that wisdom, because a lot of people like, we're not doing good, or if they failed a course and they're just like, oh, I got to give up. And it's like, evaluate it. If you want to move on, you move on for you, but not because other people are telling you. And there was somebody who, was failing the course that I was, teaching. And I taught, it was foundations, like, so critical thinking skills, clinical judgment, like the important things that we need to learn. And sometimes it's difficult to grasp those concepts, especially as second degree students. And one person was struggling, had like personal things going on, and she asked for a recommendation to re-up because I guess she reached a limit. And I absolutely did, because you can tell when someone's just having a tough time and it may not be their true capabilities, or they're not able to do that because of whatever reasons. And I'm living proof that people deserve a second chance. So it was just cool that that whole full circle moment there with that, and throughout my nursing career, that I could so far give that
Yeah,
back.
and you can share your story. You could share your story with them, so it gives them hope. When they feel, because there's just so much pressure in, not being perfect, and you have that ability to share with others. And I love the fact that you authored it. It's like, see, like you said, you don't know who you're dealing with, and sometimes things happen, and here you are. That's amazing. I love that. That's so great. I'm so glad that you shared that. Okay, so pediatric, it's so funny because I think, and this could be me, over the years, whenever I talk to people that have gone through nursing school, or even students that come through the operating room for the literally 2 days they get, you always ask them, what do you want to do when you get out of nursing school? And I feel that over the 25 years that I've been a nurse, the majority is either peds or OB. And but in the past, but now I'm starting to see more and more critical care and ER, people not being afraid of that, which is a whole nother thing. But the peds I could never do. And I didn't even have kids then, but it was something that was too hard emotionally for me to take on. So I said, there's no way I could do peds, NICU, nothing like that. Like, give me patients that are asleep.
Yeah.
That's what I really want. When I was 25, that's what I said.
I couldn't do adults. So I'm like, I loved kids because, and this is like a truth of like the art and science of it. Like kids, you have to get creative, and dealing with, especially the younger ones. And I thought of like even my son when we were dealing with our ER visit this morning. You just have a sense, like it's almost like intuition. And I know I think I made a post about this or talked to people about it. Like adults have that in a certain way. Like you get to know your patient populations to the point of like you can almost predict what's going to happen. And like kids, it's a lot of that. And I feel like moms can, relate to that. And then in nursing, it's like I won't say own them, but like they were my kids. And I was in my early 20s, and I'm like, these are my babies, these are my kids. It's like you just know them, you get to know their trends, and it was not.
So now are you still working in peds?
So I actually just left. I've been weaving and wobbling. So I did worked at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, till 2015. I did a stint of travel nursing in there, like I mentioned, out in Radies, in San Diego.
Okay, let's go through that. So you did travel in peds.
I did. Yep. Yeah, I did most of my clinical all peds. So I did clinical travel peds. Came back to Philly, resumed a job. I just kept PRN at that time. And then I always loved, I got a little foreshadowing, education. I love teaching.
Got it.
And I wanted something a little different. So then I pivoted. I feel like I'm like a master pivoter. I worked in the medical device and pharmaceutical industry
Oh, okay.
as a clinical specialist.
Yep.
A lot of education, educated thousands, and I can say thousands because
Mm.
thousands of providers of all
Sure.
capabilities and capacities. And that's where I found wound care. Um,
Okay.
and because who falls in love with wound care, especially nursing school? But that also triggered how much we don't learn and don't know.
Mhm.
So learning the wound care, I went for my CWCN during that, and went back into home care during that time. So while I worked at the med device company, I did go back into home care for pediatrics just to keep up. So I tried home care, did wound care there, again, peds. And then, left there because it was full time, and then it was a lot, and I traveled a lot with the company, which was a great opportunity.
Mhm.
And then I had my daughter, and then I moved up. I had a medical education position, which was really awesome because then I was able to influence and partner with different marketing efforts to get patient stories into the marketing and the education of the products, which was something I was deeply passionate about.
Sure.
And while I was there, I helped develop like the pediatric component of like wound care. Cause again, it's like blows minds. Cause again, listen, I'm not an ICU nurse. I never was an ICU nurse. God bless ICU nurses because there's just so much. And it's like the skin is always the last thing to really think of, right? With the ABCs,
Mhm. Right.
but it's still critical and it's things that we overlook.
Absolutely.
Why it's a specialty, right? So it's like I feel privileged to be able to know it, speak to it, and be able to bring it in a relatable capability, keeping
Yeah.
everything right.
Yeah.
So I did that. Um, then I started, ready, you got this. Then I started writing. I started the writing. The
Okay.
writing came back into play, medical writing. Then I left the corporate job, started doing, went back into patient care, into pediatric rehab. Um, and kind of elevated the writing again, the medical writing, working on policy and procedures, different articles, health and wellness. The textbook writing came into play, and then legal nurse consulting came up.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. So
Like, how
many
did we
layers.
get
So
here?
many layers. But it's okay. So this is one of the biggest reasons why I love doing this podcast and why it's unscripted
Yep.
because we're all, I think, as nurses, I mean, you can agree or not agree, you tell me. But I think as nurses, we're curious, right? We're curious what other people's stories are. And I think with nursing, there are so many layers that the story could be that we're just curious about, like, what's your story? How did you end up here? And I think it's not necessarily the legal nurse side of it, even though that's, the second half of this interview.
Right.
It's really, how did we end up getting there? And I think that it's really exciting to hear how people get there because again, all of our stories are different. We've all, we either have a couple layers or we have multiple layers. So when you said you're a master pivoter, I raised my hand because I know that all too well. And it's actually one of the things that I have always told young nurses that come through the OR, because that's really only where I can truly speak to. I have some other layers in that, but the best decision that I ever made was to move on to the next thing every 3 to 5 years. At the time, it seemed insane, but 25 years later, it's given me so much foundation in so many different ways that it makes you a better nurse because people are afraid to leave, they're afraid to change, they're afraid of those kind of things. So, for you being a master pivoter, it just shows how strong your nursing knowledge and just you being clearly, obviously you're writing, but you being very clear with what you know, the reasons behind it, And that naturally leads into legal nursing. So tell me a little bit more about that transition. Obviously, you're a great writer, which that's part of it. But yeah, tell me about how you decided to go into legal nursing. What did that look like?
Yeah, and I hope my one friend, I'm gonna let her listen to this. She's been bugging me for years to do it because I first heard about it in 2013. So I was only a nurse for 2 years at that point. It was Vicky Malazzo, like that whole. It was something coming up, and I was like, "This sounds amazing." I don't know anything, so I'm not doing it. So that was 2013. Fast forward, my friend's been in my ear going, "You'd be really good at this. You'd be really good at this. You got the writing, you got the clinical," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Then in 2022, I was working as a copywriter for a legal nurse consultant to help her rework her social, rework her website, and different things. And she was like, "You'd be really good at this." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Thank you. I appreciate it." Fast forward fall of 23, she said again, "You should really think about this. Would you want to help? I can mentor you." And I was like, and that's when I decided. And again, so around that time, I was out of corporate. I was just writing. My son was a newborn. So I was like, you know what? I need something solid. I've been pivoting a lot and exploring and enjoying the nursing. I'm like, I need to settle down in something new and let's give it a go. So I started subcontracting. I had my first subcontracting case in October of 23. And I got nervous that I liked it so much, because it's like when
Mhm.
I really enjoyed it. I'm like, this stretches my brain. I can work different ways, different angles, and it's something new to learn. Obviously, again, that's a whole entrepreneurial, that's a whole peel back layer of vulnerability, personality, and whoa. Um, and then when was it? It was in March. Just in March, I formed an LLC. I was like, I got to start, I like this. I want to do this. I'm going to take it seriously. And if I don't take it seriously, no one's going to take it seriously. So that's when I just established Bridget Carey Consulting LLC. And now I'm just going for it. So my primary consulting experience has been with subcontracting, which has been wonderful. I've met amazing nurses, amazing mentors, giving me resources. I'm doing more of a course to kind of fine tune my report writing because I'm learning. I'm a sponge learner. That's what I call it.
Mhm.
I'm a
Yeah,
sponge
no.
learner. So I'm learning like how different LNCs prefer which is fine. Like, and as a writer, I can attune to that and I kind of weld that, but also to learn the real foundational components. So that's been real fun. And, I'm working to get attorney clients. We can talk about cold pitching. I hate cold pitching. And as a writer, it's like, you have to cold pitch. I don't like it. That's just me. I'm saying it out there. I'm
Yeah,
saying it on the podcast. I don't.
I get it. Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with it. Um, Dear female attorney, if you're listening to this, that I sent that video message on LinkedIn the other day, I'm sorry, but that was my attempt at a cold pitch. I hope you saw it. So I'm trying, but I'm more of a warm pitch person. And yes, that's kind of slow going, but to me, that's more genuine. Yeah, I'll practice sending out pitches, but that's just my style. And so far, it has worked for me. Um, so that's where I am and how I got.
Okay, so I'm going to interject here
Yeah.
because no, honestly. So another thing that I think that we do, and this is feedback from new legal nurses. I haven't been doing it for 20 years. We are sometimes afraid to say how long we've been doing this, how little experience we have with this, how little experience we have pitching our wealth of knowledge. But I'm going to give you major kudos because you pitched. I take pride in finding my guests because I watch them. There's just this vibe, right? Where I go, you know what? I would love to have them on my podcast. So I reach out. You pitched yourself in on LinkedIn. And your pitch was so genuine and so real that I was like, well, this is yes, absolutely. And so I want to give you credit for that so that you understand that your pitching is not. I think the other thing is, I think that we tend to, as people that are not naturally pitching ourselves, right, as nurses, we feel like we are being salesy, right? And everybody now is so keen to someone trying to sell them whatever their product or service is. But I think naturally we can never be at that level as nurses. We think we are. We think that we're the sales, we're salesy, we're annoying, we're all of those things, but I don't think that we can actually get to that level. I think that we're harder on ourselves. So, pitching yourself, it actually comes across as being really genuine versus what we think it comes across as being. So I'm giving you a high five for that. So don't be afraid to cold pitch, because your cold pitch is still a warm pitch. I think that's my point. So, and I think that that's the only time I've ever done this on this podcast, but I just wanted to give you kudos for
Thank you.
that, because
Appreciate that.
you are very confident in your self. Obviously, I think that that's because of the multiple layers, right? The multiple pivots. You've had to learn change. You've had to step up and be unsure of yourself and become something that you weren't, a week ago or a month ago or a year ago. And I think that that's probably giving you a huge foundation in just putting yourself out there. And that's exactly what you did. And you jumped in, and it was exactly, and we can use this same analogy or story when it comes to attorneys, because at the time you reached out to me when I really needed a podcast guest, because someone had something happen and had to drop out, and there was something that had to be done, and you showed up in my inbox at the right time and you pitched yourself the most perfect way. And I was like, even if you don't have the experience, and I'm quoting, air quoting, even though you don't have the experience that you think that you may need to pitch yourself cold, like, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've done all of these cases. You need me. So I'm giving you kudos because you just never know when you're going to pitch yourself at the right time, the right place with them, because you did that for me. And I'm so grateful. And here we are. I'm having this great conversation. So because you were just brave enough to say, hey, I listened to your podcast, and, if you ever need a guest. And I've gotten pitches before, and it was meant to be. So there you go.
It was kismet.
It was kismet. It was kismet. But your cold pitches are warm pitches. So the video that you sent that attorney, maybe they will never reply, but I think it probably came across as very genuine, because that's what you do.
And that's the other thing, trying different things. Like, I guess too, like this has been one of the greatest lessons I've had with entrepreneurship. And and I heard this quote, I'm going to butcher it because my coffee hasn't really kicked in yet. But it's how entrepreneurship is like the true path or a true test of self-discovery. And you really, you think you know your things, and you know your limiting beliefs. And I love the rainbow in the background. You think you know your limiting beliefs, and then all of a sudden, someone's knocking on the door and it's like, hey, you forgot about me, or you didn't know about me, and you have to address things and learn and grow. And
yeah, it's self-discovery. So for those listeners, I was pointing, but this will eventually be up on video, but I was pointing to my bookcase in my background, and every book on this bookshelf, multiple bookshelves, are all self-discovery based. So entrepreneurship is absolutely self-discovery, and some people like it and some people don't, but you truly, it fits for you. And in my opinion, it never hurts to look at yourself and how you show up in life, right? It's even better when you can apply it to your career. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So I remember the same person Vicky Milazzo, this was 25 years ago too, promoting the same thing. I was like, oh, this would be great. But I'm a new nurse and I didn't know, I don't think I can do this. And then come back at it many years later. But since you've been in legal nursing, what has surprised you the most? Even if it's only a short period of time, what has surprised you the most as to your experience in this, or what you've seen, or what you've heard, or your experience?
Yeah, the thing that surprised me the most, and I guess this is not meant to open up Pandora's boxes, but it might, we'll say, how welcoming and open and available other legal nurses are.
Mhm.
And I say that it could be Pandora's because there's so much negativity with our profession right now. And it's got its tangents, it's got its reasons, it's got its positives, negatives, whatever. That's not what we're here to talk about. But coming on and just being vulnerable and saying, I'm new, I'm ready to learn. I have 2 kids under 3. This is where I'm at. And just the community and the welcoming and the resources, that has been incredible. And I have not experienced that at all in any other pivot, my multiple pivots since I've been a nurse. And
Yeah,
it's
no, I'm glad that you shared that, because that seems to be the running theme on these interviews, is just how valuable and kind the community is around this. And we're used to the, eat your young mentality, right? And so it's I'm glad you shared that. You did not open Pandora's box, because that is actually what I really want to focus on here, is just how warm and inviting the community is, even if you haven't been doing it for long. There are, again, a lot of those that go into legal nursing have been educators in the past.
Mhm.
So we like to be able, anyone that's going to listen as to whatever tip I have from the case I just did yesterday, anyone that wants to listen, I'm willing to share with you, because we're natural educators and we want people to succeed. So I think that the legal nurses attract those people, and then in that it creates this collaborative environment. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it's important and wonderful. Okay, so since you've been doing a lot of subcontracting and you've been learning and working with other LNCs and kind of getting to know what their preferences are, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, where would you say that you shine in the LNC world when it comes to your work products, or even your experience with subcontracting?
Yeah. And I think because of my wound care background, I've been getting a lot of questions and inquiries, and I don't say assignments, but case opportunities with
Yeah.
wound care. That, and just being able to dive into that and find the nitty gritty and find the details that may be overlooked. So that's where I'm really good at shining there. And the clinical analysis, just from with my writing and being able to weld that and meet the needs of the new. I have to I'm visual, I'm looking at the different like templates of the four critical components of meeting, like, liability, and if this is
Right.
relevant. And so my shine is my writing, and then finding the needles in a haystack when it comes to wound care and supporting that, and depending on the different specialties, I should say.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
because I've talked with people in OB, they're like, I don't know any of this, but we have a wound here. Can you, just
Mm,
give me your
yep.
advice? Um,
Yep.
hey, I have a case that's done, but the attorney wants to focus on this wound. Can you write me? I call it an addendum. Can you just write an addendum from the case file? So I'll go in and like find that to supplement what was done. So, and I enjoy it. Like, I like it. I'm like,
Well, there you go. There, that
it's,
shows that you
we're in the
shine. Yeah.
industry, right? We're in the industry. So I'm like, I enjoy it because I know and have taught wound care and all the stuff like the back of my hand that it's almost second nature. It's still like tightening my legal understanding is where I'm still looking. And what has really been beneficial, and for anyone who's thinking about legal nurse consulting or is in the beginning or even in the middle of the beginning, what I've learned from pivoting is that it truly does, thank you, Benner, 18 months to really get something. It really does.
That's good advice. Yeah.
And I hate knowing that. And I hated knowing that. Like when I first got into industry, my boss, who nurse, she was like, it's going to take 18 months. And I was like, nah, I got this. I'll take it. This is easy.
Mm-hmm.
It took 18 months. I understand legal nurse consulting. I understand where I am, but you know what? I also understand my limitations and where I still need to learn and grow. And I have time to do that. So that's
really great advice, because we all kind of want a timetable, right? You're like, I'm going to jump into this with both feet. And I think that this was on a recent podcast, actually, the one that just was released last week. We talked about how, you could jump in with both feet blindly and be like, oh my gosh, this is everything. And then you look back and you're like, wait a minute, I just left everything. Did I jump too soon? So I think that the time frame, I think that we all kind of want to hear that. So I'm really, really glad that you shared that experience with you. And I think that actually might be more of a focus that I might start to dive into. And I like, really, how long did it take you to, get your first subcontracting case or get your first attorney client or things like that? Because those are questions that new LNCs want to hear, but they're also questions that I think are valuable to LNCs that have been doing it a long time. And it's not a comparison game, but it is, we just like to see where we fit in the world. I don't know. It's just, we're curious. That's it. So thank you for sharing that. I think that that's a really, really helpful to people.
And that's my goal. Like my goal is to subcontract and I don't know if it's obvious, but get my own attorney clients, but I also want to have these work products to support, to say, here's something I have done.
Right. Right. And you know what? It's actually not everybody's goal is to have their own attorney client. Some people absolutely just want to subcontract.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So, but it doesn't surprise me that you are, that's like your stepping stone. And then you're going to dive into, getting your own attorney clients, because that's actually, I can see that in your entrepreneur nature is you're ready, you'll know when you're ready to take that leap, strongly or not strongly, but it's on your radar. So you actually answered one of my questions already. So where then do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Put it out there.
Question used to scare me. Oops, coffee break. No, but that question used to scare me, because it's like, why would I think that far? And why would I pigeonhole myself that far in advance? But it's really not that far now that I'm older. So 5 years from now, I would love to have a solid group of attorney clients and be able to subcontract and mentor and do for other moms, and dads and whoever, but really give back, almost like that double blessing of who helped me when I was in my early motherhood phase, and kind of help springboard them into the industry. And then, I still do love writing, medical writing, if I have a medical writing client on the side. All of that, ready? Let's put this in the universe. Part-time hours with that ideal financial goal. And
I'm glad that you put it out there. I did also mention this on a previous podcast that I had done that years ago. It was in another business I did, and I was interviewed and I was asked that question, and it was terrifying. And I said it on camera, and 4 years later, that happened. So I was like, and I look back at that video of me saying it, and you can hear it in my voice just how terrifying it was for me to say it, because it was like, oh my gosh, I'm really taking a leap by saying this. And then years later, I'm so glad that I said it. So that's why I love to ask that question, because it really kind of throws people off a little bit, not in a bad way, but it really kind of forces you to give yourself the motivation to be like, okay, this is what ideally I would like to, and you're putting it out there in the universe, so which is a little scary, but you're inspiring other people. Clearly, you're inspiring other people, and I hear this all the time from listeners. It's just how inspiring these stories are. So there you go. Okay. Well, I appreciate you so much sharing your story. Where can those that need a wound care expert, where can they find you? And all of this information will be in the show notes, but where can they find you best?
Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I've been really like grinding and driving and seeing my people. I made a website. It is super bare bones, but it's bridgetcareyconsulting.com. I also have a one post private Instagram. So I hope within the next week or so, I will also have some things up there. Bridget Carey Consulting as well. But right now, mostly LinkedIn, while I, because you don't have a million other things going on, work on my Instagram and social.
Right. Perfect. Okay. So if you loved this conversation, which I'm sure you did, make sure to reach out to Bridget and give her a high five. And just, that's another thing I'm just loving so much with this podcast, is that those that have been on the podcast have told me how many people have reached out to them privately and have told them how inspiring their story is. So please make sure you reach out to Bridget and tell her that. And until next time, I appreciate you being here, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this fun conversation on the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting podcast. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and empowering as I always do. And I hope that you share this episode with your friends. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could leave us a review or comment, as I would love to share them in the future episodes. Or hop on over into my DMs and send me a quick message. I can be found on Instagram at anna.b.gray, on my website at limitlesslnc.com, and over on LinkedIn at anna.gray. And I want you to remember, you are limitless. Until next time.